Today's Moravian text reading is Hebrews chapter 8. And it's really all about how the new covenant is superior to the old covenant. Remember, Hebrews is the book of better things. It was written to these Jewish followers of Jesus who had been dragged back into their old religious ways of living. And so the whole letter is structured around how this new way that Jesus brought about is superior to the old way. And today we are focusing in on how the new covenant is better than the old covenant or the first covenant. Let's not assume anything here. A covenant, simply put, is a legally binding agreement between two people or two groups of people. A good example of that would be marriage, two people making vows together that define their relationship. You know, I'm going to do this and you are going to do that, and those vows are the basis of the agreement, the binding of the agreement. And the first covenant that is being referred to in this passage is between God and Abraham. God chooses Abraham. We call that idea election first. And then God gives the terms and the conditions of the relationship to Abraham. He says, Abraham, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make you into a great nation. Through you, all people will be blessed. Genesis 12, I want you to go to the land that I am calling you to go to. Some 300 years after that, God then renews that covenant with one man, Abraham, to a covenant with the people through Moses out of Egypt. The 10 Commandments are given, the laws are given for the covenant. You are my chosen people. I've chosen you. I've multiplied you. Now here are rules and regulations for how to live in covenant community with one another and with God. That's what the rules and regulations are all about. It was a pretty good covenant. It's a covenant that still stands between God and Israel. I do believe that. God is a covenant-keeping, faithful God. He keeps his covenant promise. The problem was, human beings being fallen and sinful, they never seemed to be able to live up to that covenant. They were always going astray, wayward, turning to idols, turning to false gods, rejecting the God of their covenant. They certainly weren't fulfilling the aspect of the covenant to be a shining light to the Gentiles, to all nations, so that all people could be brought into that relationship with Yahweh, the one true God. So what does God do? Well, he comes up with a new covenant, a new agreement, new terms and conditions for humans to be in relationship with God. And here in this reading today, Hebrews 8, we're told that it is superior, a new and superior covenant. Interestingly, there are two Greek words in the New Testament for new. There's neos, meaning new and improved, tweaked. And there's kainos, meaning new in a contrasting way, new in nature. Let me give you an example. Neos, I might get a new donkey to replace my old donkey. Kainos is new in the sense that I'm going to replace my donkey with a horse-drawn chariot or with a car or with a jetpack. It's about a completely new level of new. The point is, the word used here of the new covenant is kainos, new in nature, new in a contrasting way, new in a way that the old covenant cannot compare to. It is like the old is obsolete. And that is exactly what it says in the passage, isn't it? So how is the new covenant new in that way? Well, to illustrate it, what the writer to the Hebrews does is he quotes from the prophet Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah is prophesying what maybe 1,000 years after Abraham and the first covenant, 800 years after Moses and the covenantal laws, and then 600 years before Jesus came to establish the new covenant. And Jeremiah says this. He says that old covenant, it told the people what to do, but it didn't empower them to do it, to live it. That old covenant, it was external, in the sense that, God kept his side of the bargain. He led his people out of Egypt. He was faithful to his part, to his people. But the people were not faithful in return. They turned from God. They rejected him as their God. But Jeremiah prophesied that a day would come when there would be a new covenant. This covenant would be one where God would write the laws internally on their hearts and their minds. In other words, God would empower them and equip them and sustain them to live faithfully in that covenant relationship. He would empower them to keep their side of the bargain. To do that, he would forgive them, it says, in a far greater way, in a completely new way, in a way where he remembered their sins no more. And that, my friend, is a new covenant that Jesus has made for you and for me with the Father. Let's enjoy that today. Amen.